Most men believe love can be bought with gifts and constant attention. I watch them exhaust themselves, pouring affection like beggars pouring coins into an empty well. But real power doesn't shout. Real power lives in silence. If you chase her with words, she forgets you. If you move in silence, she remembers you in the dark. Skip this, and tomorrow someone else will rewrite your story. 5 centuries ago, Machiavelli exposed the simplest law of power. People fear losing more than they desire gaining. That truth is eternal. It governs kingdoms, wars, and relationships alike. And yet most men ignore it. They try to convince, to argue, to explain their worth. They talk as if words could anchor desire. But words are wind. Emotions are gravity. I do not speak to entertain. I do not speak to be liked. I speak to show you a system of control that works without explanation. Control that takes root in her nervous system long before her logic catches up. Because logic is powerless against instinct. Desire is not chosen. It is triggered. In these lessons you will discover how to become unforgettable without noise. How to remain in her mind long after you've left the room. How to make your absence heavier than another man's presence. You will learn to command the one force that turns attraction into obsession. Silence framed by boundaries. I am not offering comfort. I am offering weapons. If you follow, you will stop chasing approval and begin shaping perception. You will stop being the echo in her life and become the axis around which her emotions revolve. Machiavelli said, "Men are driven by 2 things, fear and gain. When you master both, you never need to plead for attention again. You give everything, time, energy, gifts, tension. You flood her life with gestures designed to prove your value. You wait on her messages, respond instantly, plan surprises, offer loyalty before it has been earned. And yet, she slips further away. The harder you hold, the faster she vanishes. I have watched it too many times. Men mistake affection for influence. They confuse generosity with gravity. They believe that if they keep pouring, she will finally notice the depth of their devotion. But devotion without scarcity is background noise. A song that plays too often becomes silence. A presence that never withdraws becomes invisible. Love without the fear of loss rots into habit. She stops seeing you. She stops feeling you. You become furniture, reliable, predictable, present, but lifeless. And in that moment, the very things you thought would keep her, the constant availability, the endless affirmation, the refusal to create distance, become the reasons she starts to crave someone else. It is not her fault. It is biology. The brain is addicted to uncertainty. The Zeigarnik effect makes the unfinished more powerful than the complete. When you give her total access, you erase tension. You erase desire. You erase yourself. I once made that mistake. I thought loyalty was enough. I thought sacrifice would anchor her. I believed she would stay because I had given her everything. But the truth is cruel. When you make yourself impossible to lose, you make yourself impossible to want. This is why most men collapse. They confuse words with power, gifts with presence, effort with respect. They over-explain, over-apologize, over-invest. And she, unconsciously, begins to test. She grows colder. She delays replies. She withdraws, not out of cruelty, but to feel something again. You thought giving more would save it. You thought doubling your effort would restore her attention. Instead, you drowned her in certainty. And certainty is the enemy of attraction. This is the conflict. This is the fatal error. You thought you could buy permanence with devotion. But devotion without boundaries creates only indifference. Machiavelli warned, "He who is secure without danger will fall without glory. Without risk, love cannot breathe. Without distance, desire cannot grow." The truth struck me when I stopped chasing. Real attraction is not built on endless giving but on boundaries. A man without edges dissolves into her routine. A man with edges forces her to feel. And feeling is the currency of desire. I learned that power is not in what you add, but in what you refuse. When she knows you will not bend your values for her moods, something shifts. She feels the risk of losing you, and that risk wakes her up. Suddenly, your presence is not guaranteed. Suddenly, her choices matter. Boundaries are not walls. They are signals. Silent laws written in your behavior, not your words. When she tries to pull you into drama and you remain calm, she feels the line. When she tests your respect and you withdraw without warning, she feels the line. When she demands more than she gives and you disappear, she feels the line. And in those moments, she realizes. She cannot own you. She can only earn you. That is where obsession begins, not in abundance but in scarcity. Not in comfort but in tension. I remember a night she pushed too far. Small things at first. A mocking tone, a demand for explanation, a careless disregard for my time. In the past I would have argued, explained, tried to restore balance. This time I did nothing. I stood, looked at her once, and left. No words, no warning, silence. The next day, her voice trembled when she called. The certainty was gone. Doubt had entered. She did not know if I would return. And in that vacuum, attraction reignited. Not because I punished her, but because she felt the boundary solid, immovable, undeniable. Machiavelli taught that fear sustains loyalty more than love. Not fear of harm, but fear of loss. When she knows your respect is not for sale, when she feels your standards more than she hears them, she cannot ignore you. This is the key principle. Presence without boundaries is noise. Boundaries without presence are walls. But presence with boundaries, that is control. That is gravity. That is the quiet force that makes her think of you when she is alone, restless, and unable to explain why. She tests me. Not once. Not twice. Always. It begins with silence, her replies delayed, her eyes colder than usual. Then mood swings, sudden storms over nothing. One moment warmth, the next withdrawal. Most men panic here. They explain, they chase, they beg to restore peace. And in that moment they fail. I do not. I remain still. Her storms break against my calm. When she raises her voice, I lower mine. When she turns away, I watch quietly. When she tries to provoke me, I let the weight of silence answer. Each test meets not resistance, but immovable presence. In time she notices. My stillness unnerves her more than any anger could. She begins to question herself. Why can't I shake him? Why doesn't he bend? Why doesn't he fear losing me? That doubt is the seed of respect. That doubt is the return of desire. I know the pattern. A woman does not test cruelty. She tests strength. And when she meets a man who does not fold, her instincts shift. She feels gravity she cannot control. Machiavelli's law lives here. Never defend, never explain. Let her feel the cost of testing you. Because when her games collapse in silence, she realizes the truth. Her chaos does not rule me. My calm rules her. I became both lion and fox. The lion, unshakable, immovable, unwilling to bend. The fox, calculated, silent, moving only when the strike would land clean. One without the other is weakness. Strength without cunning explodes too fast. Cunning without strength collapses under pressure. But together they make me unpredictable. With her, it is simple. When she crosses a line, I do not argue. I stand firm. A look, a pause, a silence that tells her, this is the boundary. No noise, no threats, only certainty. That is the lion. When she tries to lure me into endless explanations, I smile faintly and redirect. I do not fight her frame, I replace it. A question, a glance, a shift of subject, and suddenly she is the one justifying herself. That is the fox. Most men are trapped in one role. The brute lion, loud and unstable. Or the sly fox, clever but spineless. She sees through both. But when she cannot predict whether she will meet fire or ice, silence or presence, she remains unsettled. And unsettled is addicted. Machiavelli wrote, a prince must be both feared and loved, but if he must choose, it is safer to be feared. I choose both. Her desire comes from my strength. Her obsession comes from my unpredictability. Power does not always need action. Sometimes it needs only a sentence, placed with surgical precision, then left to grow in silence. That is how I plant doubt. Not in her faith toward me, but in the world she believes she controls. It happens in moments of calm. A dinner with friends, laughter in the air, her confidence shining. I wait until her guard is high, until she feels untouchable. Then, at the perfect pause, I lean slightly, eyes steady, voice calm. You speak differently when he's around. Nothing more. No judgment. No explanation. No smile to soften it. Then I move on as if the sentence meant nothing. But she feels it. A crack has opened. Now her mind turns against itself. She replays her tone, her words, her gestures. She wonders what I saw, what I meant, what others noticed. The seed becomes a storm, and I never need to repeat it. Another time, she tells me, I don't get jealous. I let a silence stretch, then say, that's what you think. Again, no emphasis, no insistence. Just a shadow dropped across her certainty. Suddenly she is unsettled. Her mind starts to whisper. Is he testing me? Does he see something I don't? What if I'm not in control? That is the strategy. Never argue directly, never fight her beliefs head-on. I do not try to convince. I only suggest. And because the human brain cannot stand unresolved tension, she convinces herself. Her mind becomes divided, and in that division my presence grows stronger. Most men seek to comfort, to reassure, to eliminate all doubt. But comfort breeds indifference. Doubt breeds obsession. She does not crave the man who makes her feel safe every moment. She craves the man who makes her question herself. Machiavelli said, men are more influenced by the things they do not fully understand. The same law applies here. By planting questions without answers, I enter her mind not as a fact, but as a mystery. And mysteries are never forgotten. When a boundary is crossed, I do not argue. I do not shout. I do not explain. I vanish. My silence is the punishment. My absence is the proof. She feels the cost not in words, but in the void I leave behind. And that void burns deeper than any lecture ever could. First, she resists. She pretends not to care. She distracts herself with noise, with others, with pride. But the silence lingers. Her nervous system revolts against the loss of my presence. Her mind replays every detail. The moment I withdrew, the reason unspoken, the outcome uncertain. That uncertainty is her cage. Then, slowly, I return, but not with abundance. A look, a small smile, a brief touch, rewards given rarely, unpredictably, like drops of water in a desert. And because she does not know when the next comes, she craves it more than any steady flow. Most men reverse this formula. They punish often, reward too quickly. They become unstable, predictable, easy to manipulate. I do the opposite. One clean punishment. Rewards only in earned doses. The rhythm trains her instincts until my approval feels like oxygen. Machiavelli warned, injuries must be inflicted all at once, benefits little by little. I mastered that law. Pain given swiftly is remembered. Pleasure given slowly is desired. That is not cruelty, it is control. Most men see the obvious. I watch the invisible. The flicker of her eyes when a name is mentioned. The pause in her breath when silence stretches. The way her hand lingers a second too long on the glass. These details are my map. They tell me more than her words ever could. Observation is power because it disarms. She thinks she hides, but I see. And when the moment is perfect, never too early, never too late, I release one line that pierces deeper than any speech. Calm, precise, unemotional. You laugh differently when you're nervous. You looked away when I asked that. You're not as calm as you pretend to be. Simple statements, yet they cut through her armor. She freezes, caught between exposure and curiosity. Does he see me more than I see myself? Why does he notice what no one else does? That question plants itself in her body, not just her mind. The key is restraint. I do not flood her with observations. One line, delivered at the right time, has more weight than 100 compliments. Because it does not flatter, it reveals. It does not seek approval, it takes it. Machiavelli said, The man who understands appearances will always rule over those who only see reality. I watch what others miss, and by naming the hidden, I become unforgettable. At my peak, I do not give more. I disappear, not with anger, not with scenes, quietly, as if the world itself shifted and I was gone. That silence carries more weight than any presence could. She feels it immediately. The chair across from her is empty. The messages unanswered. The familiar rhythm broken. At first she tries to resist, but the vacuum pulls her deeper. She replays every glance, every word, every silence I once left hanging. She wonders what she missed, what she did wrong, what she failed to see. Absence becomes proof of value. If I were ordinary, she would not notice the gap. But when she feels the loss like oxygen stolen from the room, she realizes the truth. My presence was never common. It was gravity. Most men cling harder when they feel distance. They plead, they explain, they beg not to be forgotten. I do the opposite. I vanish at the height of her dependence, knowing her mind will do the work for me. Because the human brain cannot bear unfinished stories. She cannot close the chapter. She cannot escape the replay. Machiavelli said it clearly. Men are governed more by the fear of losing than the hope of gaining. My absence is that fear, and it binds her tighter than my presence ever could. She is no longer the same. My silence carved deeper than my words ever could. The woman who once tested, mocked, and doubted now walks carefully, aware of the cost. My quiet exit became her turning point. She learned that love without respect is nothing, that desire without risk dies. And in losing me, she reshaped her own values. My absence rebuilt her more than my presence ever did.